Guys, I am very sad to report that it is officially freezing in the UK. It's very cold right now. Hugo's at the door. It is actually so cold that I have my hot water bottle practically strapped to me 24/7. Anyway, I'll put him down there so he's not stealing the show. So today we are talking about 3 tips for eating in a calorie deficit. Now I say this a lot, but there is an abundance, if not too much of an abundance, of information out there about how to eat in a calorie deficit, what diets you should be following, what foods you should be eating, etc, etc. Honestly, it's never ending. And I can see the damage and the confusion that this causes when I work with clients and through messages that I receive as well. And honestly, it breaks my heart because I was that person. I didn't have a clue. I was overwhelmed and confused. Oh, I hope he does not cause any havoc. I'll keep my eye on him. And I say this a lot, but it doesn't have to be difficult. It can be really simple, but I also understand why it is not that easy in practice to just make it simple. So I'm hoping that these 3 tips can just give you a little bit of peace of mind and maybe a little bit of confidence in what you're doing, because there is no doubt about it. Even if you're here watching this video, I know that you're trying. All right, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about is something that I mentioned in one of my recent What I Eat in a Days, and that is to think about optimizing your meals rather than purely about restriction. So when we have the goal to lose body fat, what we essentially want to do is create a calorie deficit. We want less energy coming in than our body is using. It's then required to tap into our fat storage and use that over time. Now this has to be a consistent thing over a sustained period of time. And often what happens when people are thinking about going into a calorie deficit is we think about what we can restrict, what we can take out of our diet, what we can avoid completely. And we often think about healthy versus unhealthy. I honestly think that the biggest issue with this really comes down to it's just not that enjoyable, it's not motivating, and you're just gonna feel like you're missing out. So it means it becomes unsustainable and therefore we can't do it for the long term, and we just continue in this cycle of coming back to the beginning and trying again. But if you can change that narrative to instead think about how you can optimize what you're eating or optimize your meals and snacks to help you towards your goals, this can be really, really beneficial. So for example, if in the past you were used to having a big bowl of cereal for breakfast and you started to embark on a fat loss journey, you might try to think about how you can minimize what you're eating or to avoid unhealthy meals. Not that cereal's unhealthy, I am an avid cereal fan, but the narrative tends to be that cereal isn't going to help us towards fat loss goals. And we all know that that is not true, but we're just gonna use it as an example here. So in the past, you would have had a big bowl of cereal. You're trying to think about how you can change your diet to help work towards fat loss. So you choose a yogurt instead. Now, having simply a small bowl or small pot of yogurt really isn't going to be that satisfying. If you're used to a bigger meal, then the likelihood is that this yogurt is just simply not going to cut it. And by mid-morning, you'll be hungry or you'll be feeling unsatisfied, which might lead you to want to make poorer choices or maybe snack a little bit more than you would have. So instead of just reducing what we're eating to have this yogurt, we could then look instead about how we can optimize this meal and what we can add into it. So first what we can do is we can look at what's going to keep us fuller for longer, aka what's going to keep us satiated. So what would be great is to add in a source of fiber, a source of protein, or a source of fat, or all 3, because these foods are going to keep us satiated. So to the actual yogurt itself, I'm going to add a little bit of protein powder, a little bit of peanut butter, which has got some protein and fats in it, and also some cinnamon, because we don't want to miss out on flavor. We still want to be able to enjoy our foods. We could then also add some fruit, and this increases the volume of what we're eating. So we're really bulking it out, but we're not increasing the amount of calories significantly. So I'm going to add some banana, and I'm also going to add some blues. Now we've obviously got the volume, but we've also got the nutrients in the fruit. So we've got some more fiber coming from the banana, and it's also a great source of carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are good because they are a great source of energy. And then you can just play around with the toppings. You can add whatever you have in your cupboard, you can mix and match. And really what we're trying to do here is make a meal that we're going to genuinely enjoy, because that's important. We still want to be able to enjoy our food and not feel like we're being punished or restricted. So as you can see, just a plain small portion of yogurt versus a bowl where you've taken the time time to add things in and really make it something that you'll enjoy are going to lead to different results, especially if we extrapolate that out into the long term. Likewise, as an example, for dinner, you might be used to having a curry, and instead of having your normal portion, you might simply just think about reducing how much you're eating. But again, reducing it so quickly, it might lead to feeling like you're being restricted, feeling like you're missing out, and feeling unmotivated. So let's think about how we can optimize this meal. Well, you could bump up the protein by adding a protein source into the curry. You could, of course, increase the volume, so you can still have curry with rice or a naan bread or whatever it is that you fancy, but you could have some vegetables on the side. And simply by increasing the volume of the food that you're eating, you might naturally eat a little bit less of the curry and maybe the rice as well. So without a huge amount of effort, you're reducing how much you're eating. And we also have the added bonus that there's lots of fiber and nutrients in the veggies as well. And then you can also look at making simple switches. Now, obviously, if you're buying out, this isn't going to be as easy, but if you're cooking it at home, you can look at what oils you're using or maybe the sauces that you're adding into your meals, and here you can easily reduce the calories rather than having to change the meal completely. So you can still have what you enjoy, but just make a few simple switches to optimize it for your goals. All right, point number 2 is to understand how a calorie deficit works and also why it doesn't work for some people. I already mentioned it before, but a calorie deficit simply is having less energy coming in than your body is expending on a consistent and regular basis. And if that happens over time, your body is going to be required to find that energy elsewhere. So it'll start to tap into your fat storage and take it from there. Now, there are so many ways that you can do this, and I'm going to touch on that in a second. But I think it's important to understand why some people don't find success when they're trying to eat in a calorie deficit. And the first one for that, and this is something that we see quite regularly, especially in personal training, is just simply adherence. People aren't as consistent as they think they are. A lot of the time, this is not on purpose. They genuinely think they are in a calorie deficit. So it might be that the consistency just isn't there, or it's not been a long enough period of time, or they simply aren't doing what they think or say they are doing. Another one that we see quite regularly is that people actually aren't in a calorie deficit. And there's a couple of reasons why this might be. So I'm just going to touch on a few. The first one is that they're actually burning less calories than they think. So it's very hard to accurately know how many calories your body is burning through exercise and through movement. But obviously the energy that you're expending goes towards your total daily energy expenditure, which is what we base our deficit off. On top of that, a lot of people rely on smartwatches and fitness trackers to give them that information, to tell them how many calories they've burnt in an exercise session or how many steps they've done in a day. However, these are wildly fragrant with their estimations, and there can be variations of up to 30% plus or minus the actual figure. So if we solely went off what our trackers were telling us or what we believe to be true, we might end up consuming more calories thinking that we've burnt more calories than we actually have, and therefore eating to maintenance. Secondly, and conversely, we might actually be consuming more than we think. And I've mentioned this a few times. If I totted up in my head how many calories I ate in a day, and then I actually tracked and weighed out every single thing that I ate, I'm pretty sure there would be a rather big variance between the two numbers. I actually think it can be quite an interesting thing to do, to really pay attention to portion sizes, because sometimes, and I use cereal as an example all the time, if you actually weigh out what they tell you is a portion of cereal, it's actually not a lot of food. I mean, that's pretty much what I'm eating as I'm pouring the bowl of cereal. So it can be really interesting to see what these portion sizes are like, and also the nutritional content of certain foods that we eat regularly. Now, coming back to our original point where people consume more than they think they are, this might happen if someone is tracking and they're not actually weighing out their portions and just eyeballing it. They can sometimes be consuming more than they think. Another one that we see that's not necessarily related to tracking is that people don't consider all the little things that they're snacking on throughout the day. It might be half a digestive biscuit here, it might be a little bite of chocolate there, and while on their own they're all very, very small amounts of calories, they add up very quickly. And if you're already eating in a deficit, you can catch up with that total number by the end of the day very, very quickly. And also there's the chance that we overlook certain things that we just don't really consider have calories. So things like oils and sauces and liquid calories, they can often be forgotten about, but again, they can contribute quite a significant amount to our daily amount. And so through all these different factors, we could actually be consuming more than we think we are in reality. And of course, that would then lead to no fat loss progress and therefore us feeling like we failed, when that's simply not the case. So understanding what a calorie deficit is one thing, but also understanding some of these common pitfalls can be really beneficial, so you can rationalize how your progress is going and make sure that you're giving it the best opportunity you can. And also not beating yourself up for it, because there's no time for that. And thirdly, and finally, the last one is make it personal. You need to think of your eating habits and your foods and your nutrition as specific to you. Again, you need to come from the perspective of this needs to be sustainable and satisfying for me and what my preferences are. Maybe there is no point completely cutting out that after dinner chocolate bar that you love. Or maybe you shouldn't skip breakfast if that means by mid-morning you're going to be hungry and maybe not make the best decisions. Or vice versa, maybe skipping breakfast is a good option because you like to have a really big dinner, or you want to go and have a big social event in the evening, and therefore you can bank up your calories for the end of the day. Maybe meal prepping is a fantastic option for you because you have a really busy schedule and you want the convenience of having everything pre-portioned and ready to go. Or maybe you want to prepare and cook each meal as you go because you enjoy the process of cooking. It also uses up a little bit of time in your day where you're focusing on something else and maybe not tempted to snack just due to boredom. I mean, these examples are just scratching the surface, but I hope it highlights that you should take a bit of an inquisitive approach to your nutrition and find out what really works for you as an individual and play around with that. It might take a while, and that is okay because we have a while. This is a lifelong approach that we are taking here, so there is no rush to find out what works for you. And it's also good to be aware that that will probably change in the future. You will change, your preferences will change, your life is going to change, your schedule is going to change, and therefore the way your nutrition works for you will also change too. And that is it, guys. I wanted to keep this video short and sweet to give you just 3 things to think about and hopefully give you a little bit of peace with what you're doing and a bit of confidence as well. If you have any questions, of course you can drop them down below, but otherwise I will see you very soon in the next video, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye!